So everyone, again, welcome to our first, hopefully, of many community roundtable Q&As. Today we have Brad Wardell, Creative Director and CEO of Stardock. And we also have
nice to be here.
And we have Chad, or on here Rook, who is the producer on GalCiv IV.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here.
And together they will answer all your questions, and I will pretend that I'm useful. I should specify that I am the lead community manager, Henry, or System Navigator, as I'm called online. So we do have a massive list of questions, but to begin with, if anyone wants to come up and ask a question in person on mic, now's a good time to do so. So we'll do this kind of in sequence. So the way this works on Discord is you should see a little hand icon, request to speak. If you have a question, you can click that button and we'll see who has a question to ask. I just put myself in the audience there. If no one has a question to start with, we'll just start with the first from the list. So yeah. Who has a question about GalCiv IV?
Go ahead and go. Oh, I see a hand.
Yeah, Derbis just put their hand up. So I'm going to invite Derbis to the chat. Invite to speak. Hello.
Hello. Will there be an increase in documentation for various game features? I know getting into the game, it can sometimes be difficult to understand how, for example, defenses work, or some of the more obscure features.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's going to be in the game is in-game advisors. So they're partially AI and partially canned documentation on what you might want to do at this point, rather than having to kind of flail around, figure out what you should do. It'll say you might want to build a colony ship, or your beam weapons are good for this, or and some of it will be VO'd. In fact, there's going to be a lot of voiceover this time around. So it'll be a nice, calming, you should send your colony ship to another star system, and that sort of thing.
Anything to add to that, Chad?
No, just as Brad is saying, of course, we're always thinking about the complexity of the game and everything that needs to be communicated to the player. So it's a prime focus from a development and a gameplay perspective, for sure.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Well, I was more thinking along the lines of, I guess, how Civilization has encyclopedia, and in many games I like to consult the wiki, but that's based on the ability of the community to add that information. I was wondering how much information will be available to the player in game.
Yeah, I know that we want to do a galactipedia. How far we can get into that remains to be seen. But one of the nice things about this is we have Sarah, who is our UI goddess, and so now we can do things like have hot, and you'll see this even in the alpha, where there'll be kind of underlying things where you can mouse over it. I don't think we'll have the tooltips within tooltips in, but yeah, the idea is that you'll be able to click on, like, let's say beam weapons, and then that could potentially take you to the galactipedia setting. But yeah, that's Chad, add that. I want to make sure we definitely have a little book they can click on and go through and get to all that stuff. Plus, it's a great way for us to have the lore in game, rather than people having to go to a wiki or even going to some PDF document.
Yeah, that's great. We can absolutely get that going. Of course, as you say, we've got quite a bit of it sort of written out already in terms of the tooltips and the guided advisors and things in the game. But getting that early and often into a more digestible text-based format, we'll absolutely get going on it.
I think we had Tide added a question as well about this, that the XML files, can stuff from the XML get blown into a Galactipedia? So that when it updates Galactipedia as well.
That seems doable. Certainly from because we at the end of the day we actually use a Excel spreadsheet for everything, and then use VB scripts to export everything out. So it seems like that would be possible. That should also that's been heavily done to take care of the problem where we had in GalCiv III at times where the text descriptions were just wrong.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Davis. Okay, next up we have Tristan raise their hands. So we're going to invite Tristan to speak. Hello.
Hey. Hey, Brad, just wanted to say I've been following GalCiv for a very, very long time and appreciate all the work that you do and your team has put into it. Had a lot of fun over many, many, many years. And in regards to my question, I saw the dev diary that came out today and was wondering, with all these unique personalities and characters that you have, how are you going to handle the late game where you might have a large sprawling empire? How do you minimize the micromanagement at that point that will be necessary for all your various planets?
Sure. Well, the big thing this time is that you're only really managing a tiny, tiny number of them. So in fact, we're kind of running into the opposite problem right now, where there's so few plants to manage that we might need to boost it a little bit. But so the big thing is the difference between a core world and a colony. So on a colony, there's nothing to manage at all. It's just providing tech to a core world. So even very late game, if you figure every core world has 10 to 15 colonies, even late game, if you have 200 colonies, you may only have 10 core worlds. So in terms of your citizens and that, they're kind of like they're little stat boosts on a per core world basis. So even if you have 10 core worlds or 15 core worlds in a really big galaxy, you're still not dealing with a lot of different characters there. There's a lot more effort this time around too. With Chad's heard this phrase from me a lot. No permanent on-screen tooltips, because that's always been my problem with the GalCiv games, and we didn't really. That was kind of a problem in GalCiv III from a UI perspective, is that we didn't really fully make that transition to high resolution, so we ended up with a lot of just screen dirt. And so that makes a late game a lot harder when you have what seems like mountains of on-screen dirt at you, rather than just here's my list of stuff, and if I want to care about something, I just mouse over it and see what's going on with it and with an indicator. So the answer to your question, the most succinctly, is that we're handling it by having much, much better UI.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we also have Halcade wants to ask a question. Let them to speak. Halaside. Welcome.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
So I submitted this question a little while ago, but something really cool that your game had that I don't think anyone else has done was the ability to export the ship model for 3D printing. And at the time, it was probably an underused feature, but there's a lot of people nowadays that are in the 3D printing community that are able to print resin and other things. So will you keep that for GalCiv IV, or is that getting removed?
Nope, that's in the alpha too. Well, no, I should take it back. I think it's in the game. It's hidden for alpha, but it's because the ship design stuff, I think it's hidden for alpha because we haven't really done much with that screen. But yeah, you'll be able to 3D print. I was just noticing that. Oh yeah, ironic. We added this 3D printing back in 2013, 2014, and hardly anyone had it. Now both my sons have 3D printers, so yeah, that might make it a lot more useful, especially since the models and stuff are so much more high res than they were.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 people now with questions. Again, we're going to go in order though. So next up will be Cycloness. So I'm going to invite Cycloness to speak. Hello.
Hello. My question is pretty simple. I was just curious if you're going to bring forward the adjacency bonus.
The short answer is yes. It is somewhat different now, though, than it was in GalCiv III, in that you now have districts and buildings. So the buildings are very infrequent. We found that late game it got kind of tedious dealing with like 500 different little buildings and stuff. And so now there's just districts for most of it. And if you put a bunch of districts next to each other, they kind of buff each other up to be better and better. And then you can plop a building or a wonder down to make it even better.
So I noticed that like early in the game, I was able to build up my cities to a point where no AI can compete, and it just slowly over the years kept getting adjacency bonuses kept getting diminished. I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have the same issue.
Well, it's a little bit different. That's why we're doing the districts thing, because for that very reason is that what would happen is that let me give an example. I would put down like a space elevator or or down on every planet, and then I could buff it up so that I was just out producing all the AI players. Right, you get a bunch of asteroids coming in, and you have all that stuff going in. And so we've changed the economy so that you do have adjacency bonuses, but they're doing it on a basis instead. So rather than everything being a point. So ultimately, the only time the buildings themselves, like a space elevator or even a galactic mainframe type thing, they're not designed to give you actual raw points anymore. They give percentage bonuses. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays, because we'll be trying to game it like you described, so that we want to destroy the AI if we can.
Yeah, because I know early in the game I could get up to 70 to I think 75% miniaturization when you used to have it on buildings and militarization, and no AI ship could ever defeat me.
Now you mean militarization in terms of production or something else?
Miniaturization. Your military.
Oh, miniaturization. Gotcha. Miniaturization. Yeah. How'd you do that? What were you building to do that?
Would build a military, find a world and build a military core where I could have all military buildings surround one military building, and I'd get my score up to 65 to 70%.
On miniaturization?
Yes.
Oh, that is clever. I would say that's more of a thing that less about. That is probably less about the adjacency and more about I didn't know about that that particular thing, because usually I'm trying to exploit it, and then once I exploit it, I go, oh, that's the thing. I didn't know there was a tech that miniaturized. There isn't supposed to be any improvements that do that, as far as I know. But
because I have videos on Steam on how to do it when the game first came out. But you guys eventually removed miniaturization out of the building, I think, for that purpose.
Oh, okay. Well, wait, can you still do that sort of thing, though?
Because you took miniaturization off the building upgrades.
Yeah, that would make sense. So you shouldn't be able to miniaturize based on buildings, because anything like that, especially when you're talking something that reduces it, right? Because you can essentially get almost infinite size ships. So you basically have the Doctor Who ship.
Yeah, pretty much. My small ship, like large ships.
Right. Yeah, I think you'll find it to be quite a bit different this time on the way the adjacencies and stuff work. And it's still going to be, we've been changing. In fact, even since I showed a screenshot to a couple of people earlier today, and it's already different this afternoon than it was this morning. So we've been playing around with that, because we want everything to feed through the citizens as much as we can versus the adjacencies.
So much in alpha and beta, and then when it went live, that I used all the new tools that you gave us in GalCiv III. I used them to my advantage, and no AI had a chance.
Well, that's good that you're doing that. Yeah, unfortunately, I wish I had been around for that, because I came in very well post. I worked on Crusade, and then that's why Crusade was kind of pretty different from the base game. And so, yeah, I wish I had seen that.
In general, GalCiv IV is a chance to kind of do a whole new design for the game.
I'm looking forward to beta testing and breaking it.
I definitely want people to. I definitely look forward to people breaking it and doing. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to break this alpha, by the way, because I'm already finding stuff that is going to. So because the whole core world versus colony thing is something that it will be very interesting to see what happens with that, because it's kind of like the asteroids in GalCiv III, except now they're feeding in tech as well. So it's like, where is that fine point where someone figures out, well, it's better to have 600 colonies to your capital world rather than using governors at all. So we're having to carefully balance that. And it will be an ongoing challenge, right? Where is that fine line? Because that is the key balance. When should you put a governor to have more governors versus having more colonies?
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Doug's been waiting to ask their question, so I'm going to invite them. Hopefully Doug is awake. There you go. Hello.
Hello. One of the things that I've liked from the very beginning, GalCiv 1 all the way through 3, at some point, the minor civs and the minor races being in the game. I liked their interactability. They kind of added a little guy that you could protect, and it's just kind of a feature that I liked. But at some point in GalCiv 3, they were taken out either because they were off balance or it was just not enough of a use for them. I'm wondering, are they going to be returning in GalCiv 4, and what kind of balancing ideas would you want to implement for them in that case?
Yeah, so GalCiv 4, the miners are coming back. They're going to be done more like GalCiv 2 and GalCiv 1. And the problem with GalCiv 3 is that a minor race was the only difference between a minor race and a major race was that the minor race had a artificial if-then statement in the AI that said, oh, you can't build colonization ships. And the problem with that is that to the player, it wasn't real distinctive, and then you had this weird situation where some of the AI had nice animated aliens when you're negotiating with them, and then some did not. Whereas now the minor races will get their own little screen in the diplomacy area, so it'll be much more kind of like you're radioing them rather than having a full-on diplomatic discussion with them, and you'll be doing more like you can try to make them protectorates, or they're kind of like in Civ 5 they had Schism, what are they called? The not minor, but they're basically minor races.
Nation states.
City states. Yeah, so they're like, these are going to be more like space city states.
So each of them, would there be like a favor system for that, or?
We haven't decided yet. Right now, it's going to be whoever that. Well, I guess in the sense that we're playing around with whoever they're the best relationship with gets bonuses from them, and they'll be kind of passive bonuses. But you won't be able to, for example, tech trade with them. And in fact, we're not sure about the tech trading. There was a great discussion on Explorminate that we even discussed potentially having it where instead of trading tech, you're trading tech points like we did back in Elemental and in Fallen Enchantress, because that takes away the whole gamey AI tech trading nonsense, which will be tough for me because as the guy writes AI on these games, that was always a great thing for me was to have the AI aggressively trade tech because I'm a dirty person.
As far as tech trading goes, last point.
Sure.
The minor civs in previous games, I think, could sometimes steal techs from more advanced mainstay races. Would that stay in? Like where you can have an event to acquire that, because it would be like, oh, this race acquired this tech from this race, but they're interested in planets or other things.
It would be more like there would be custom missions around them rather than a specific tech. So a lot of the game revolves around having these interesting missions. That is how we spill out the lore. Whereas, like, in GalCiv III and even GalCiv II, we would have the campaigns and the games separate. Since we're incorporating that in, we'd like to have more of that in with minor races instead. So I don't know if you'll have a tech thing per se. It'd be more like there'd be a quest, or we don't call them quest, mission that involves that tech.
Okay. Thank you very much for answering the question.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. All right, so next up we have Delapine, or Delapine. Invited. Hello.
Hi, hi. It's Dan Lapine. So, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to play the game over so many years, and such a great excuse to upgrade my computer with 12 cores and 32 gigs of RAM.
Ooh, nice.
So, but I have two quick questions. One is, will there be multi-monitor support?
It's funny you should bring that up. We were just talking about that yesterday. What would be involved? I would have to talk to the elf girl, Carrie, on what would be involved with creating a second, basically DirectX window. Because it sure would be handy if, when I'm playing the game, I would very much like to have my list of colonies in a separate window on another monitor. I have 4 monitors, so it would benefit me greatly. But I'm not like you probably played Spring Commander back in the day.
No, just
it supports multi-monitor. So I don't know how hard. If it's not hard to do, it would be nice if we could have the planet list and the ship list and stuff be in a window on another screen. But I don't know how hard that is.
Okay, and then the other one I would ask about would be what level of modding are you planning to support, and are you still looking at Steam as a way to do those, to support that modding effort?
Yeah, so this time around, we're going to build the modding into the game itself rather than using a particular platform, because we ran into a lot of problems with when the game comes out on GOG and stuff, it's like, well, those people can't really get the cool stuff. That's not very fair. So what we want to do, hang on, my machine just locked me out.
Modders know.
What's that?
The modders know they need all access now. Need to know.
So all that stuff. Yeah, so all that stuff is literally built into the game this time around, so that we can do. It's easier to share your stuff around. It'll certainly be the modding in GalCiv III was kind of a mess, and it became impossible for modders to maintain anything because effectively there were 2 different games, right? With the benefit of hindsight, GalCiv III Crusade should have been GalCiv, and then we could have just had this nice, simple modding thing. But instead, we had this 2 completely different games that we were trying to work together from a directory structure. So GalCiv IV should be a lot easier to mod, and all the modding stuff will be built in to the game itself natively.
I know, Dan, that our head game designer under Brad there, Derek Paxton, is very much keen to keep the modding community as active and as involved as possible. So I do want something that stays top of mind whenever we're doing anything in the game. That component is always on the table there to see, how can we make this attractive for the modding community and keep them invested.
Well,
yeah, and I know that Carrie had done quite a bit of work to try to make it easier for modders before she went on maternity leave back before GalCiv III went into main development. She has gone and been making that whole system way more robust for GalCiv IV. Because the big problem with if you're a modder, the biggest problem is that if the game gets updated, you don't want it breaking your mods, and because that's extremely frustrating. So the goal on our part is to make sure that doesn't happen this time.
Well, excellent. That sounds really great. There is one request from my wife. Can you add the real-time clock option back?
I think, Chad, can you make a note of that?
I can make a note of that.
All right. Thank you for your question. Again, everyone has been asking in text chat as well. We are going through questions as quickly as we can. If you raise your hand to ask a question, keep it raised because we can see when you raise it. So we have a list of the oldest person who asked a question to the newest. And then once we've gone through those, we'll go through the text questions if we have time. So next up is Ghost Faint. So I'm inviting Ghost Faint to speak. That's the question. Hello.
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was going to be more depth, more tactical options and ship battles in GalCiv IV. I know you're kind of going away from micromanagement as much, but I think that would be kind of cool. I was wondering what your thoughts were on tactical options for ship battles.
That's more of a Derek thing because I know that we're baiting from game. A lot will come down from sitting down and playing the game and seeing how much time there is. Not even. I'm not talking about engineering time. I'm talking when we're playing the game. The reason why we never wanted to have full-on tactical battles in GalCiv is because late game, one turn might have 30 or 40 battles on a big map, and that's overwhelming. And we didn't want to have to put in auto-resolve in. That players were having to pick between auto-resolving and doing it quote-unquote right. This time, since the battles are multi-turn, especially when they get bigger, I mean, early game they're not multi-turn because the battles are so simple. That creates some interesting stuff where more stuff will happen on the map. We're even playing around with the idea that some fleets and some ships can actually shoot multiple tiles away. So that creates, so we're, rather than monkeying with stuff on the inside a special screen, you're instead doing stuff right on the main map screen itself. How much we get into, the alpha testers will have a lot to say on that, and then later beta testers.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know. We also have had some discussions about multiplayer for like how we do turns for that, but it's probably a different question to get to. So next up is Lord Goldmane, the first. Invited to speak. They're on their phone though, so I'm not sure if they'll have any issues. Hey.
Mic test.
It's working. What's your question?
So one of the biggest, I guess you could say, pet peeves I've always had with the GalCiv games is the incomplete and empty soul system. So I was wondering if you guys had plans to actually complete it with all the ancestral bodies.
It's funny you should say that. I should always Chad, how much have I nagged the team about the fact that there should be at least 8 planets in our solar system? Because like in Star Control Origins, if you played that, you say we got, not only did we get all the planets in, we added a planet, we added Artemis. I personally would like to see moons be colonizable targets as well, but that's whether we're able to do that or not remains to be seen. I will say that even in the alpha, GalCiv IV has a lot more planets than GalCiv III had, including adding Artemis out there. So there are now 3 colonizable planets right in your home system. Plus you have more. Plus you have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. I don't know if Neptune and Uranus are in there or not, but we, at the very least, up to Jupiter and Saturn are in there. But like I said, I would like to see them even get into the moons and stuff, but it does get a little bit overwhelming. We also, what I think people will notice the most when they play the alpha is that on turn 1, there is just so much more to do, much more interesting things to do than in previous GalCivs. I rolled the first 20 turns of each GalCiv game, going from GalCiv 1 on. And it's amazing how much dead space there is in GalCiv 3 compared to GalCiv 4 at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I can say that, for the past couple of months, there's been, I'm sorry, my hounds are saying hello.
The hounds!
Yeah, they beckon. For the
They want
past
more
couple of
moons to
months,
howl at.
of ongoing conversations about what that starting map really looks like and how much to put in it and how to balance that. So your question is right on point with everything, that we've been focused on for some weeks now, which is what exactly should that be? So, Brad said, hey, get Artemis in there. We want that starting solar system to have, the proper amount of opportunity. We don't want it boring. Let's build those things in. Personally, I'm really excited, with the way that it's going and the way just some of those implementations have dramatically, updated gameplay, because we're really focused on turn one. What happens at the entry point? How can this be amazing, from the word go? So I think you'd be pleasantly pleased. Things would change over alpha and beta and that type of thing, but it's definitely been an internal focus for some time now.
I see. I did have like a couple more questions, but I don't want to be too greedy.
I think we could
Oh,
do
take your
question. I think we do
yeah,
another
take
question.
your favorite one.
Yeah, best one.
I loved the original GalCiv. I mean, that's how I got into it. It was on one of the computers at my school. And that's how I got into it. But a lot of newer computers can't play it. And if they can, it screws with the screen resolutions really bad. So I have been thinking how it would be a very good way to put GalCiv on mobile. So I was wondering if you guys even thought of it.
Well, yeah, it would be pretty difficult to do that. That said, they are supposed to update the Steam version of GalCiv 1 so that it runs better. The key things there's two things that you have to do to get to run well. You have to run it with the WIN parameter, and you want to turn off the on-screen battles because it does something weird with the sound effects. Oh, and Brian just said it. We did it, and it made things worse. Wait, running it in the window made it worse? It shouldn't. That's how I got to work. Well, Brian, how could it make it worse? Oh, he says it crashes for people. Oh, it doesn't crash for me. It worked on my machine. Well, you can try running it with the WIN parameter in Steam, and that should help.
I see. Well,
unless it crashes it, then that doesn't help.
Two more questions, I think, off the top of my head, if I'm allowed.
If it's a GalCiv IV question.
Yeah. Any chance you guys can do planet buildings? I don't know how to describe it better than using an example from a different game, but if you happen to play Mass Effect 2 or 3, the way the scanner screen has a completely round planet that you rotate for scanning, I think it would be really cool to have that interface for actually imagining the planet so that you have a full planet that's completely round and you rotate and build off of. I think, anyways, I'm wondering if you guys would be able to do something like that before.
Yeah, we've played around with that kind of thing before. And in fact, Star Control has an interface like that. Here's the problem, though, is that it's really cool to have that kind of UI until you have 50 or 60 planets to deal with. And then it's not so cool anymore.
Isn't that what governors are for?
Well, as a player, I don't want an AI governor. I want to be managing my own planets.
I guess. Another thing is,
or I should say, I wouldn't want to have to be using an AI governor because the developers of the game decided to make the UI in such a way that it wasn't fun to play the game after you got so many planets, right? I wouldn't want that to be the reason why we didn't do it. That said, the planet screen is very different than the previous games.
It changes with each games.
We have for people who are still waiting to ask questions. So
we need to move on. It was nice to talk to you.
Yep. If you raise your hand again, though, we can. If we have time, we can get back to you. So thanks for the
I can
questions.
do that.
Yep.
And we now go to OMS. So I invited OMS to ask their question.
Oh, can you guys
Hello.
hear me?
Yes, we
Yep.
can.
Hello there. Just wanted to say thanks for taking my question, guys. And I'm a big GalCiv III fan. That's where I got my start personally. So I was gonna ask about combat actually, but it seems like you guys kind of covered that a bit. So the other question I wanted to ask was, Brad, I know you mentioned that there's a lot of influences in GalCiv IV, and considering the sort of different environment we're in these days with the different kind of innovative 4X games, what kind of inspirations are you bringing into GalCiv IV to kind of make it unique and stand out among the crowd?
Sure. So I would say the thing that people will notice not immediately because you can't see it right away, but will be the sectors. That's something that people are going to notice because most 4X games tend to go with the node system where there's every star is connected through by some sort of hyperlane, and GalCiv is freeform, so that's always been something that makes it kind of stand out. And this time with the sectors, I think people are going to find that the gameplay is pretty unique in that you have a sector. A sector is like a small GalCiv map, so you can set between tiny and medium, really. What would it be equivalent to a medium-sized GalCiv map? And from there, owning a sector gives your civilization special bonuses, and in terms of if you have the most influence in there, and that will open up a lot of innovative gameplay experiences. The other thing I think really, and in hindsight, it's a pretty obvious feature, but I think that people will really take well to is the colony core world dynamic, where one of the problems we ran into in all the GalCiv games prior to this one is that you had we didn't want to have too many planets that you could colonize because then it was a lot micromanagement nightmare. But if we didn't have enough planets to colonize, then the game was a little bit boring because what are you doing then if you're not colonizing planets? You're just fighting wars and stuff. Whereas now there are so many planets that you can colonize, but you don't manage them. They're just colonies that give tech and resources and food and stuff to a core world. And I think those two game mechanics are going to ensure that this game really does stand out. In terms of games that are really influencing me lately, I am a big fan of Crusader Kings III, and I really do like a lot of the things that I've seen in that game, especially from a UI point of view, and that's been influencing me a lot lately. Obviously, you can't really translate Crusader Kings into GalCiv very well, but there's still a lot of really neat ideas.
Yes, people don't know Brad's current time on Crusader Kings on Steam is ridiculous. In fact, I think you only have 2 reviews on Steam, Brad, and one of them is Crusader Kings 3. That's how much he loves it.
Yeah, negative review. Died of smallpox.
Did you have a second question?
That's awesome. I guess my next follow-up and my last question is, from the character's perspective, I know you mentioned how you wanted to give like the governors more personalities and stuff. So I was curious how that was going to work into the game, and if kind of the player changes. Like I'm sure you're not going the full character perspective, the player is a particular character, but I'm wondering if it's still kind of the perspective of you're controlling a race or a faction, or if it changes in GalCiv IV.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do have your leader, like in the previous GalCiv game. So if you play as a Terran Alliance, so you're playing as both combined in GalCiv IV. You play as, but the way your character / civilization evolves has to do with the choices you make during the game, which then can affect how you get along with your leaders, who may rebel and take their planets with them, if you don't like it. That's certainly one of my favorite things about Crusader Kings the Civil Wars in that game are very enjoyable. In fact, I actually want to find a way to have some sort of prison system in GalCiv IV. I won't go into more detail than that because people know I will think I'm a monster. But that aspect of every governor has a potential backstory, which allows us to be able to roll dice and potentially have an interesting mission come up. Or not, right? Most of the time they won't come up. I think makes sure that every game will feel like an epic story and very different from one another.
Yeah, we have a big focus on trying to improve the role-playing factor for GalCiv this time.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and so next up is Hannah. Or Hannah Cos. Ready to speak? You there? It might be offline now. Oh, no, there they are.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
No, I just didn't see the accept button. I wanted to expand on mods question. Mainly which language it will be in, like if it will be in Lua or something like that, because the XML files were not really good for that, in my opinion.
Well, in terms of the game's languages, we'll support the same languages we did in GalCiv III. Certainly, it is still using XML for modifying data and such.
I mean, there is a problem that there is not really big support for this format, so it's quite harder for people to actually mod, I guess, because of that.
Probably. It's unfortunate there's not much I can do on that.
I think one thing we can try and help with, and because we have a couple of the big like shipbuilders in working with us as well, is to try and improve the information on how you can modify the game and try and make that more accessible via our updated wiki as well. That's something we'll probably look into trying to make as easy as possible. But as Bert says, we haven't changed everything on the underlying level for modern, fortunately. Maybe GalCiv V, we will.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly, if there's ways to make it easier, I'm all for that. I just don't know what's the best way to do that.
I mean, if I do remember well, in GalCiv II, there was an editor for things to add and likely manage your own mod within the game's design. So that would also help a lot, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that would be something we'd have to look at making a tool or work with the community to make a tool or something like that. I'm not sure.
Do you have a second question?
I think not for now. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Right, next up is Branovic. Hello.
Hello.
We can hear you. What's your question?
So you mentioned in your announcement showcase that there will be no, single-player story campaigns that like the previous 3 entries in the franchise have had. So I was wondering how the story of Galactic Civilizations 4 is going to be handled without that.
There'll be a canon story that happens behind the scenes, and then what we do is we kind of give it out piecemeal during a given playthrough. So it's almost like you're seeing an aspect of it rather than a scripted story.
Okay, and then I guess a follow-up question to that would be: will we have a way to adjust the frequency that those kind of story events happen?
Yeah, there's the usual what's it called and when you set up the game and that there's an event frequency. I think we had that in GalCiv III also.
Yeah. In general as well, I think as we also mentioned previously, is the idea is that we're having a lot of the story told via kind of the in-game dynamic missions and stuff. So it's not just that the events you knew from GalCiv III, they're a lot more complicated and a lot more like they can have ongoing, like coming back to remind you that, hey, you're doing things or things are happening which involve you and will affect you both from a mechanical and story perspective.
Okay.
I think you had a follow-up question, but if you have a second question, that's fine as well because I've got there wasn't much time to answer that one.
No, I think that's all I have for now.
Okay,
Thank you.
Next up is Red Earth, invited to speak. Hello.
Hello. Hi. First, just a quick statement. One of my favorite features of Stardock games, which includes the Elemental series and Galactic Civilizations, is that you can in Elemental you can create a unit while playing as one faction, and then the AI will use that unit, same name, same loadout. Same thing with Galactic Civ, where they'll use your exact ship designs. That's one of my favorite features. So just letting you know, keep up with that. And now my question is, I want to be an arms dealer. And I know that's difficult because getting the AI to correctly value things is, tricky, where often you're either have to see it as a gift or you run the risk of the AI just being, abusable. They'll, give you everything for almost nothing. So I'm wondering, how does trade of like weapons or ships work out in the new game?
Sure. So that's a great question because we did put some thought into that. So there's 3 types of new resources already in the game that were moved away. The first type are modules. So in previous GalCiv game, in GalCiv II, you actually had to go build another constructor and send it over to a starbase to upgrade the starbase. And GalCiv III, you had to go around to your starbases and click on them, and then everything had its own costs, and you had to figure out, well, do I have the resources to do this? This time around, you can actually build a module, and you build them at your shipyard. They cost X resources to do it, and once you build the module, it's a resource, and then the starbases take that upgrade through modules. Like the X section such takes 1 module, or a section takes 2 modules, but that becomes the currency, so to speak, for the shipyards. So that means that when you're trading with other civs, you can do that with modules. We also have nanites that work like that, and we have drones. So if you wanted to make it your business to be like an arms dealer, what you can actually do is, rather than trading just full-on ships, which you can do, which I'll get into in a second on how we're limiting the what I used to do to cheese the AI is I would just trade all my old junk to the AI and take all their stuff. But this time around, if I want to, though, I could actually get into trading these special components that things use, these widgets that are valuable to the various civs. Now, in terms of the trades themselves, one of the new concepts in the game is the idea that there is your trade ability, your diplomacy ability. I don't know if your trade ability or diplomacy ability, probably your diplomacy ability, will determine the size of a trade. So now there's 2 variables. One is the whether both sides agree that it's a fair trade, and the other one is can the trade happen? Are the 2 civs combined diplomatic ability large enough, sufficient enough to deal with a trade this big? And this prevents a player from just going in and saying, I'm going to give you all my old ships that I've built, and then I get all of your techs, because I have, I've been playing the guy, I have 300 turns in, I have all this junk. Whereas now you won't be able to do that, because unless you'll be able to do it if you focus on diplomacy a great deal as your strategy. But then if you've done that, you haven't done certain other things instead. And that allows it to be someone who wants to focus on being an arms dealer would go up that path, right? And keep everyone happy with them through that path. Another thing that we have in there, and this is where the arms dealership comes into play as a strategy, is that there's a new concept called diplomatic capital Eric's put in the game. And with diplomatic capital, it's basically like think of it as a resource, but it's used for basically persuading people. So again, you can play around with keeping people liking you by giving them diplomatic capital that you've then traded. So again, the idea is we're trying to combat the idea that you always have to have a big military in order to keep them from invading you. Instead, you can schmooze them with diplomatic capital that you've earned through trading. And you could be doing all this cool, building of arms through even the raw materials for building it that you've constructed to do that. I'm probably going into too much detail, but does that help explain does that help illustrate what I'm talking about?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is this person. They put a massive list of questions. So they have to decide for themselves which one's going to ask. It's Askeloff. Invited to chat. Askeloff? There they are. Hello. Is your microphone working? Hope so. Oh, that would be frustrating because I know you've posted a bunch of questions. Hold on, he says. What they say?
Well, we can always make sure we take some from his list too.
Oh yeah. So one of the questions, let's pick one at random. One question that someone asked was, customization has always been a big part of the game. What customization options are going to be part of GalCiv IV?
Well, certainly one of the things we are doing is that we're going to break the cosmetic ship designer out from the in-game ship designer. All right, not in-game, but in a given game ship designer, because what you end up with is something that's kind of not satisfying to either group, right? Because you want to keep what's in game simple enough for players to be able to use it, but it's not sophisticated enough for the hardcore people who really want to go nuts with it. So now these super advanced ship designer is going to be external to the game, or not external. It's from the main menu, right? You won't be inside, and then in game itself, you'll deal with an existing cosmetic ship that exists, and you're just equipping it at that point. So how much we get to go on it really depends on our just in terms of time and budget. I know that Paul would like to go really nuts with it because he loves working on the ship designer.
Of course, we have some of our two of our top ship. I mentioned before already, but two of our top ship builders from the community working on it as well. So obviously, their input is a big factor here.
Yeah, that's helping a lot too. I was playing it today, and I was noticing just how much nicer ships are.
Yep. Okay, so I'm not sure if Askeloff's mic is working, but they've posted their questions in text. So the first question they have is about combat mechanics. The one big change we know about ship-to-ship combat is that it now lasts multiple turns, depending on the number of ships involved on both sides. Could you share any further detail how this change will affect combat from what we know from GalCiv III, like retreat mechanics, flanking maneuvers, line of battle, etc.?
Well, in terms of retreat, the retreat's pretty straightforward, right? If after a round, the surviving ships can try to get out of there. So you get a hit. You can actually do a potential hit and run tactic, right? Where you get in there, you do a strike with a ship, and then they get to hit back because it's one round. And if your ships are still around, it can run faster than the other ship. They can leave. I imagine Derek will come up with all kinds of other little things you can equip your ships with that let you do that, take advantage of that mechanic. I don't think we've come up with a full list of things that they can do yet, but you can almost imagine where and again, this is not in the game at this point, but you can imagine a module on a ship that lets you do basically a sucker punch, right? You get one attack and they can't hit back that round, right? And then you can leave, or any number of other things like that, things that reduce the number of rounds that are in a battle, for example, that they're smaller battles. But effectively, GalCiv III always had the rounds. It's just that we would do a wild, that I put this in my Exterminator article. It was sort of like, while one party is, two parties are still alive, keep doing it forever. There's an interesting side effect, by the way, of this system, and that is, wow, do turns go a lot faster late game, right? Because one of the problems we've run into late, we do go into Profiler, and it turns out that an AI versus AI fleet battle on somewhere on the map that you're not even aware of, where both sides have like 30 ships in the fleet, that could take like a couple seconds. Because it's that's all happening on one chord. There's nothing we can do about that. And whereas, because it might take 600, 700, or 800 rounds for it to figure out. Whereas now, if we decided that a given battle is only 10 rounds, that battle's going to, that's just going to take a lot of, probably you don't want 60 turns to complete a battle, but it'll be a lot fewer rounds or a lot shorter of turn times. But yeah, it'll be the fact that the battles are multi-turn now. It's going to have a lot of consequences that we still don't really know yet.
Still exploring, so we'll see how that goes in alpha. So second question Ascaloth has is about the ship designer. So I understand that what I'm mainly asking here is, are there any plans in the works to add a blueprint designer, which we can use to create custom blueprints that auto-generate ships according to our own specifications, much like how default ship designs are currently auto-generated in GalCiv III?
I don't know yet. That would be that's something I'd have to talk to Derek. I know that there's a number of changes in terms of the way the ships are going to feel, especially from an AI point of view, where they're a lot less slippery. That's not the right word. Where a given, we're trying to move away from there being lots and lots of weapon types, and instead move back to more like the GalCiv I and GalCiv II way, where there's only like a handful of beam weapons in the game, and all the other techs simply do a boost to those existing weapons. So in terms of creating a template one, I don't know yet. I would certainly like to see that, because it would make my life easier. I was just complaining to the Chad and this over the weekend on how painful it is to create a blueprint ship as is.
Only we could replace all designers with AI.
I had to create an armed shuttle, and it was really a pain in the butt. And I wanted the AI has to be it's a challenge.
Right. Yes.
Because you want all the AI, you want to be able to create a bunch of stuff in the editor and to get the AI to all just use it right off hand, and then I can send it out to everyone rather than it's only for one civ.
Thank you for your questions, Ascaloth. And Ascaloth said thanks for answering them. So next up, we have Zacel Darkmoon, hopefully. There they are. Hello.
Hi.
What's your question?
A little backstory of where I'm going to get with this question. I've been in and out, so I don't know if someone's asked this already or not. When I first got introduced to Galactic Civilization II, my computer was fine. When you went to go to GalacTic III, I actually upgraded I bought a new computer and upgraded because you were changing the operating systems. There's different core requirements, memory requirements, etc. That computer is done well. When you introduced in one of your expansions on the game, it allowed people to see what their computers were able to handle as far as what they wanted in the game as far as length of turns. So I could tell if I could play up to a medium-sized game for a map per se, and still have my turns go somewhat quickly, where I didn't have to sit for 10 minutes waiting for the computer to lag through when I was going on, let's say, a huge map. What is going to be the optimum for GalCiv IV as far as game requirements or computer requirements go, as far as memory, computer power with all the other AI stuff that you're implementing into the game?
Yeah, this one should be have about the same as GalCiv III, because we looked at extensively at the profiler on where all the turn time was going, and it basically went through two different areas, especially late game. By far the biggest one is the Pathfinding. That got to be pretty crazy, because what you'd have is people playing these really, really, really big maps, and the AI has all these ships, and they're going, 300 tiles, 400 tiles away. What has to do with the pathfinding through that? And that's expensive. So this time, by eliminating the dead space and instead having the subspace streams for that pretty much eliminates that. The second thing that used to take up a ton of time were the battles, late game, AI versus AI battles. Is we had to play them out, and they're expensive, and there's a lot of stuff involved. And even if you're thinking, well, one only takes, you're talking milliseconds, you get enough battles, so it's eating up a lot. Now that they're fixed rounds per turn, that's not a problem anymore. So, ironically, I expect the turn times in GalCiv IV to be quite a bit shorter than in GalCiv III. Now, where we will have is on the graphics card, because the graphics of the ships are quite a bit better. We have a much better. The ships you'll see it right away. The ships and stuff just look better, and that's because the ships actually have a true material system.
Okay. Well,
but I mean,
good,
it's
yeah,
not
'cause-
like it should. If you have a decent video card, like it should be fine. And even if you don't, you can always lower the option settings.
Right. Well, the reason I was asking that question is because after about 6 years, I'm getting ready to upgrade another computer. So GLAFs, I put a lot of time. I was the elite. I got on the elite founder for GalCiv III, and I thoroughly enjoy the game playing it. So I'm looking forward to perhaps getting a little upgrade on my computer system and being able to play a much larger dynamic in the game.
Cool. Yeah. Well, the more cores, the better.
That's good to know.
AMD's
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
you. All right. So we're going to go to, I think, Basher next. We do have a couple of people who are also waiting ahead, but they've already asked questions before. We'll swing back round when we have gone through the next two. So, Basher, if they accept the invitation. There they are. Hello.
Greetings from historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you for coming online. We really appreciate this. My question is pretty simple. GalCiv IV, are you planning a civ builder similar to the one for GalCiv III? And also, is there going to be a similar bazaar and marketplace, especially bazaar, because when the initial game, if you're really falling behind, you can really get some nice ships with some good perks that can really boost your early game, where you can get a pretty good advantage and get yourself back in the game.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's been changed quite a bit. So the first part, you in terms of the Civ creator, absolutely, we're going to definitely have that. The second part, I think the bazaar is going away, and instead the marketplace and the mercenaries features are actually split up. Which they were kind of was a little weird, anyways, and because we had the mercenaries and then the market came later. So the way the mercenaries are being done this time, there are two ways that we have planned, and we'll see what the alpha testers say. Is that the first way is that we have this concept called executive orders, and this gets back into the governors versus direct control of the game. But when I say governors, I don't mean AI governors. Basically, you put governors on planets that you want to directly manage, and you have this concept of control. So you can build things on your core worlds that give you control, but they anger your governors, which makes them more likely to rebel and stuff. And of course, they don't actually produce stuff for you. This is going to be another area where we'll have to do a lot of balancing because it can be really gamed. And what I mean by that is there are buildings that will give you control, and you spend control on executive orders. So, as an example, one of the things you can do is go spend control to recruit mercenaries. And at the beginning of the game, you actually get enough control to recruit mercenary pretty quick. So you click on it, you get that, you bring up the mercenaries, and you can hire them in.
Gotcha.
The other way they can get mercenaries is through the leaders. And we're still playing around with this, and it's not in the alpha. But in theory, every one of your leaders that you recruit is supposed to have a ship. And then one of your options that you can have with the leader is to actually pop them in on the map. So if you get in a desperate situation, is instead of having a leader turn into a governor or a leader become a minister or a leader become a diplomat and spy, you can say, whoa, this guy actually has a pretty decent ship for combat or for surveying or whatever. I'm going to pop him on there onto the map as a commander, and then I can fly around and do stuff with him.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. I really appreciate, like I said, coming online and giving us some insight.
Well, thanks.
All right. Next up, we have Lars. Speak. Hello.
I'm here. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can.
Again, Dragnol, the idea of going to the Fallen Enchantress tech trading for points, it'll totally fix the problem of exploiting the AI. That's a great idea. My question was on the governors on your core worlds. Are they all limited to your primary sector, or can you spread them out into different sectors to essentially governor or governate from each sector? So you put a core world in one sector, a core world in another. And lastly, how many core worlds do you get as a percentage of planets generated from the galaxy? Meaning that, can we have 10? Can we increase that in the XML to like 20 or 30? I know several of us like to do a lot of micromanaging.
Sure. Well, there's no limit on the number of core worlds you have in a game. Every planet is a colony until you give it a governor. So you recruit your leaders, and then you can assign a leader to a planet, and then it becomes a governor. And then, it becomes a governor, and that world is now a core world. So in theory, you could make every single planet a core world. And that is a strategy to take, and it will be interesting to see the balance of that. Of course, the fewer colonies a core world has, the weaker it is. But on the other hand, the fewer colonies a core world has, the less corruption there is too. So it's really up to the player's style. Where it's a classic great big versus tall discussion, right? You could, in theory, just have Earth or whatever your capital world is only with colonies. Now the problem is that all of them are going to have like 90% decay from all the corruption. Well, you could do that if you or you could have every single planet be governed in theory, but of course that means you're using all of your leaders that way instead of for other things.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you.
And of course, also how you get to Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy. Single planet with all the bureaucracy. Okay, next up, Rob wants to speak. Invited him to chat. I think he may be having some issues with Discord. Not sure. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'm hogging you too much, Brad. Hey, Brad. Hello, Henry, Rook. Thanks, you guys, for doing this. I appreciate it. I just had a quick question because, Brad, I know you've mentioned that you have no qualms with borrowing good ideas from other developers, and there's something that I really like about Amplitude Studios, and that they have allowed their communities to create like new factions and new things like that. And, you know, I know you guys are trying to implement a bunch of new races. Would you consider maybe doing some sort of like community involvement or community involved sort of like racial or faction creation contest or anything like that?
Yeah, and I think we did that during GalCiv III at one point.
We also did it for Star Control. Well, kind of.
Oh.
We had
with the Star Control? Yeah, I definitely would like to see. So one of the things, because we want there to be a lot more players in the game, we definitely are open to having the community suggest new species to have. It'll help if and anyone's free to do that, and I'm welcome. I absolutely would welcome that, so I happily would give credit and and steal their ideas if they let me. Obviously we're trying to stay away from humanoid. That's been kind of one of my pet peeves, is I don't like humanoid aliens. I feel like we have plenty already, so non-humanoid aliens suggestions are certainly welcome.
Thing is, your
Awesome.
slime
And can I?
balls.
Oh, so yeah, yeah, exactly. So real quick, one more follow up, and I know it's because I don't want to take too much of your time, but you said that in our interview, and since you've also said so online, that you just you're not averse to borrowing good ideas from other good games. Are there anything else or any other games that you're looking at that kind of do something that you're considering borrowing from?
Well, there's AI Wars, there's Distant Worlds, there's of course Crusader Kings I steal a lot from. There's still I look at Stellaris, even Endless Space 2. Trying to think of, but really in terms of the games that I look a lot at, I look at Distant Worlds quite a bit for ideas. I even talked to Ray Fowler, who's doing the remnants of the precursors for ideas on his game. His game's very much like original Plan, but still, there's still a lot of good ideas there. And actually, there's another game called Dyson Sphere I steal a lot from. That new one.
Yeah, I like that game. It's like Factorio, but cooler.
Yeah.
Well, there's problems though, because it's the spherical world thing that creates some issues, but that's for a different discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, gents. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this, guys. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Next up, we have Ray.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Brad, this is a question I generally try to ask any developer who's making a game that I want to buy, but I think it should resonate more with you than anybody else, because I'm going to invoke my gamer's Bill of Rights, specifically right 4, 8, and 9. I don't want to have a third-party download manager to play my game. I don't want to have to require an internet connection to play a single-player game, and I don't want to have to deal with DRM. So my question to you is it possible, even after the release, after all the piracy concerns are passed, is there any chance we can get maybe a collector's edition box set of the game without DRM that we can just play on our computer without internet connection?
Yeah, we do that with we have that with GalCiv III already. I mean, we have GalCiv III on GOG, and there's no copy protection with that whatsoever. You can just, it's just exe on your drive.
So I can order a box set?
No, you can't do the box set. There's unfortunately the putting together a box set. I would love that too, because I love I'm an old Ultima 4 fan, and I love my cloth maps and all my lore and stuff. And but it costs so much to get those going that you're really just better off. If you want a non-copy protection, non-internet version, just to get the GOG version and put it out that way. Put it on a CD. Or what am I saying? CD. I'm not dating myself. I'm putting it on a USB stick or something.
Even USB sticks are going with the Dodo because of the whole wireless.
Well, I almost said put it on a floppy drive.
I still remember when they were real floppy drives, the really floppy ones.
Hey, I have an Amiga, so I like my Amigas. I like my floppy sounds.
Yeah. Did you have a second question, Ray, or was that it?
I guess I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. I'd love to have a box set, but I appreciate.
Me too. It's not just GalCiv. You know what? Star Control Origins. I would love to have done a nice box version of that.
Yeah,
because I feel like
if you're worried about costs, you could try to maybe crowdfund a Kickstarter for it and see if there's any interest in it. You may be surprised.
Yeah, I'd probably be surprised, but we can see. Because there's one of the reasons why I would love to do that is because of the lore, right? I mean, I've been writing the lore series for so long, and there's just so much history and I would love to put that into a book form and include it in a box.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, one more thing just for you, Henry. We actually did that with Sins of Solar Empire Rebellion, including having a ship. And we sold less than 300 or 400 of those.
I also remember, we tried to look at ways of doing little plushies and stuff for Star Control Origins at the time, and it was such a pain to try and get even stuff like that done on a small scale. But
it's always economies of scale.
Yeah. So, Wizik, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I got a question relating to multiplayer. I've noticed that Stellaris has a system where only the host needs to have the DLC. So I've been in games with friends where I've been the host and they've been able to try out the DLC that I have owned. Is that possibly going to be a system that GalCiv IV is going to have?
I would certainly hope so. We did that in Ashes. Every other game of Stardock other than GalCiv III works like that. The challenge is usually about the art aspect, but that shouldn't be a problem now. It goes all the way back to the problem of that GalCiv III Crusade was basically a different game with its own directory structure, and that was just a nightmare to juggle between the two. So I can't make any promises, but it would certainly be our intent, and that would make it conform with our other games. You can...
Yeah.
Ashes Singularity, if you have all the host has all the goodies, everyone else can build all the goodies.
It's also how Sims works as well.
Yeah, I got another question relating to terraforming. Well, this is probably going to be 2 parts, but I was wondering what terraforming on a core world would look like, and if it would be possible to, say terraform a planet like Venus, for example, and have it be usable as a colony.
Well, that's a good question. There's that, and it's 2 questions. One on taking a core world and adding more tiles to it. I just saw they were arguing that yesterday. I saw Derek and the team discussing the best way. Chad, where are we at on that?
Yeah, so terraforming is a thing that's a really hot issue in the development right now, and we have some previous functionality and a few different ideals amongst the developers as to how to implement. So right now we're putting in various implementations, play testing through them, tightening it down. Sarah's working on that really diligently, and everyone on the team, of course, is really, really passionate about the game. So you always get some debate and a lot of ideas, but it's working. It's literally something that we're working on day by day right now. As far as where it's going to land, it'd be premature for me to really speak on it. But we're always interested, of course, to hear ideas and to hear what sort of things you guys would like to see happen.
Now, on the other half of it, on the taking Venus or whatever, one of the things that I think is going to be interesting is that in this game, and this goes to why stop at planets when you have stars, right? Also, is that upgrading is a thing in GalCiv IV that really wasn't in GalCiv III, and it's pretty welcome. I really have to say I really enjoy leveling up my survey ship and then adding a command bridge or a to increase the speed of my ship in that. And I would like to see there be like some sort of resource that if I spend, I can actually upgrade a planet. So I click on the planet and I get to upgrade it to another level. Whether we get there or not in the time we have, I don't know, but the mechanism is definitely.
Okay, I have another question. Also, is there going to possibly be cross-platform multiplayer? Like, if I have friend A who owns it on GOG and I own it on Steam, and friend C owns it on Epic, will we be able to play together?
Yes, that is a mandate for this, not just this game, but going forward. I think we actually upgraded GalCiv III so that we can do that. I know that the multiplayer in general for GalCiv IV has been reworked a lot to make it a lot less painful. And in fact, the multiplayer. So the problem with it seemed like a good idea at the time, I'm sure. But in GalCiv III, a multiplayer game was a single-player game with multiple people, which meant it was not real workable at times. Whereas in GalCiv IV, the multiplayer is going to be more like we're going to take more of a Stark take on it, where you start a multiplayer game, you play the mode, basically a scenario, and you play it out that way. And whether you're on GOG or Steam or Epic or I don't know, whoever comes out with a thing, in the future, we want them all to be able to play together.
That's also part of the impetus behind the mod manager stuff as well. So it's always like whatever platform you're on, you always have access to the multiplayer and mods.
Yeah.
We have a kind of a discussion in chat as well currently about asking if we'll be able to construct basically knockoff Death Stars, so Terra Stars and other megastructures.
We don't have knockoff Death Stars. We have Terror Stars.
Terra
You're a
Stars,
completely
yes.
unique concept. I have no idea what a Death Star is, but Terror Stars are completely different.
I was going to ask one last thing. Is it possible for us to know when the alpha is releasing next month?
Ooh.
I think we're planning on the first within the first 2 weeks of June, before the Steam sale.
Okay. I'll move back to the audience. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. So Cyclones again. Do you have another question for us?
I was just wondering, one of the main things I loved about GalCiv II was the way the AI would send you tells and taunt and torment you. That was missing in Galactic Civilizations 3. Is that something we can bring back for 4?
Yes. That's something I put in there. I think I actually, I don't know where I put that in the dev journal or what, but I actually show where the AI would, you're embarrassed. Look, you're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing me with what you're doing right here. There was a big drive during the development of GalCiv III, engineering-wise, to make everything data-driven. And I am not a proponent of that for games universally. And so for GalCiv IV is going to be, it's still data-driven for the most part, but a lot of the AI stuff will not be. We're not going to attempt. It means you won't be able to mod the AI quite as much, but there wasn't a lot of modding of the AI, and the modders would correctly say that it wasn't worthwhile because it was impossible to debug it anyway. So short answer is, the AI will be a lot more not snark. I don't want to break the fourth wall, but it will. So it will do it in an in-universe way. It'll say something like, "Our spies tell us that you're doing, that you're about to, you're surrounding our planets and about to attack, but we have decided to go first." And it was really great in the OS2 version. The OS2 version, we had stealth ships, and they would actually surround your ships and then announce that it knew what you're doing and kill all your transports.
One of the main things I really played Galactic II for so long was just the AI was just, I would just play just to see how they were going to taunt or torment me.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be a lot more of that kind of thing this time.
Yeah, it made me want to attack and get revenge more just for snacky comments. It just made me want to play more. So I was hoping.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I want to have prisons. To be perfectly honest, because now you're going to be capturing AI leaders, right? Because every empire is made up of empires, so it won't just be I can have a particular Drengen, governor being snarky to you, and then you capture him, and what happens happens. That's all I'm saying.
What happens happens.
What's that?
What happens happens. Now you know the working conditions of Stardock. What happens happens.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, we have
dinner.
We have Oms and Goldmain again asking questions. I'll have Oms up next, and then Goldmain. I think for the question.
Don't forget, we do want to get to the people who submit questions too. We want to make sure that
yes,
we get there.
We have a few of those to go through. So, Oms, do you have a question?
Yeah, just one other quick question. So I know popular mechanic that's been showing up in a lot of 4X games, like Distant Worlds Universe and Shadow Empire, is the private economy. Have you thought at all about trying to bring something like that into GalCiv IV? I know that's one of those like kind of fun and interesting mechanics, and also a way to alleviate some micromanagement. So curious if you've given that any thought at all.
Well, we've always had a little bit of that, right? You used to be able to, in GalCiv II, actually contract out stuff to the private sector to do stuff, and then they would be paying them. We also have the concept of missions. We're going to have to call them something else, but where the private sector is going out and finding stuff, but it's still tied to your, and it's always been one of my bummers is that it is ultimately a pretty command economy, right? Because you're deciding everything in the game. So I don't think in the version 1.0 we'll be able to delve too much into that, but I would like to see an expansion or something down the line that really has almost like a East India Company type mechanic in the game, where because right now your governors work for you, but what if there were governors that work for a private corporation within your economy, within your government, or your civilization, I should say. So we probably won't be able to get too much into that in the base game, but it's something that the groundwork's being laid for.
All I'm saying is, where the new tiny mod?
What's that? Oh, yeah.
All I'm saying is, where the new tiny mod?
Yeah.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Let's go through a couple of these submitted questions beforehand. I assume it's people who've been asking questions as well. So one of the more interesting questions for me personally was someone asking about phenotypes. And specifically, they realized that doing animations is very time-consuming and expensive. However, there was a question about if we could reskin existing animations in different colors and basically have some more flavor there in regards to like different types of like phenotypes for aliens, and how doable it is for us to implement that.
Yeah, one of the things, here's a bunch of interesting stuff on that, because we've been able to make aliens than we have in the past and have them look good. This is a case where I wish people weren't taking all the good GPUs because for Bitcoin mining, because we're able to create stuff a lot faster as a result. But the answer is that we would like there to be a lot of different variations of the existing aliens, just so that we have more customization, more than just hue shifting on there. But like, you take the Drengen and you have 5 different types of iterations of Drengen that are slightly different or something. Same thing with all the others. It really boils down to just how much time we have, because I do want to get there. We do want to make sure we have lots and lots of minor civs that have, they're not animated, but they're at least, they still have to be designed. So it really comes down to how fast Ninja and any of the other artists we have. Not to mention, a lot of our spaceship artists are on a separate project going on at the same time. So our artists are spread a little thin.
Another question. This is probably a Derek question still, because a lot of like combat questions is: will we be able to have additional ships, reinforcements to join an ongoing battle?
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of the whole benefit, right, of multi-turn battles.
There's also an adjacent question about will more than 2 civs be able to fight the same battle, as in like the same actual, I think, space combat?
Well, they won't. It's you could have again since it's happening on the main map. It's not. You can have like everyone can join in on the main map. They won't be in the same set of rounds per se, though.
Mhm. I think we've already kind of answered this one previously, but someone asking about if we're able to turn on and off macromanaging colonies. I think the way that we've been describing this is that you won't actually be macromanaging colonies automatically. You have to assign a governor first to actually be able to do stuff with them. So we're changing the entire way that's kind of working.
Yeah, if you don't want to micromanage colonies, then don't assign governors to them and then just deal with it that way. But there won't be any AI-based governor type setup in this game.
Will map sizes be changeable for modders provided they have the memory?
I don't know. That's more of a carry question on how big things get before bad things start to happen. I know one of the things that we have is we have Control N is working, which is
yes, Control N is working. That was a
and we gotta. I don't know. That was one of the things that really bugged me about GalCiv III is I just trying to game within a game took forever, and I was like, now it's fast. Again, it's like GalCiv II again. Well, almost GalCiv, not quite that fast. Pretty fast. So I don't know how big. Right now, it's almost too big. I made a couple because it's you can end up with a pretty ridiculous size gal. 64-bit is very abusable, by the way. Just in general.
Here's an interesting one. Any chance to get diplomacy system based on espionage knowledge?
That would be a Derek thing. I know we're debating on whether there's a number of things like whether you can have your diplomats essentially generating diplomatic capital through espionage. How deep we get in that remains to be seen. What we're finding is that as we're playing the game, a lot of these features end up basically begging for additions to it that let you take advantage of it even further. Derek and I are constantly like, oh, what about this? Like, oh my God, yes, of course we have to have that.
Here's a question that should be easy to answer. Will one be able to somewhat import factions from GalCiv III into GalCiv IV? I think they mean about modded factions. I'm not sure if they mean the official factions, but we are doing the official factions into GalCiv IV, of course.
Right. That I don't know. I would suspect not because there's just so many changes under the covers. A better question would be whether you could do ships, which, again, I don't know the answer to that either. It remains to be seen.
There's a question I can't find right now, but I remember it because it's a cool question to ask. And this is for both Brad and for Chad to both answer. What is your personal favorite new feature or mechanic or thing in GalCiv IV so far?
Oh, the leaders.
Yeah, leaders would be my second, just because I'm a bit of an art nerd. So some of the new ships we have coming in for me have been really amazing just to watch and to fly around on the map. But from a gameplay perspective, it's definitely that idea of cultivating your leaders, understanding who they are, what their stats are, whether or not to assign them as governors on planets, or where to place them, because you can do a lot of things with leaders in the game. So it's really compelling stuff.
Yeah, the leaders is one of those things like, duh, why didn't we should have had this? This should have been in GalCiv I. Though, the core versus colony thing is another really obvious. Why didn't we do this before? We almost had to. Or like one of the things that I like now is that everything feeds the core. It's core world. Like a group of colonies feeds its core world, and then the core world feeds the shipyard, right? In the GalCiv III, stuff would feed shipyards had sponsors, and then that was I forgot to sponsor the shipyard, so I wasn't running optimally for 20 turns. That's frustrating. It's like, no, that's all gone because a shipyard only has one sponsor, and that's its core world, and that whole thing is just so much nicer.
It's just generally more intuitive. Like, oh, you make these colonies and they all feed back to your core worlds.
Yeah, and it's just obvious, of course, right? The core world has the shipyard.
We have a couple of questions about AI as well. One which I think would be kind of interesting is if a player loses, will they be able to take over an AI civilization, continue advancing the story from a new perspective? So, like, you've already lost the game, but you can be like, but I want to see how this all ends.
Well, that's interesting. It's kind of funny because in debug we do have that already. We have to. So, because we have a soak feature that lets us essentially just watch. I'd have to talk to that's an idea. Chad, make a note that we should discuss that because that would be kind of because you can imagine someone just having a game of watch the galaxy unfold.
But just
we effectively have that now, but it's always used for QA.
Yeah, I think Carrie was actually musing in one of our calls the other day about whether or not there was something that we wanted to allow people to do. So yeah, I've made a note of it. And
based in observation mode, right? Your last colony has been taken. Do you just observe and then you can just let it go into auto turn?
Here's a good question. Will a citizen species have an effect on them, or is it just cosmetic?
Oh no, there's big difference between species, right? Because what planets they can use is different, for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. I know also there's one species we have which may or may not start eating other species.
Well, I know we definitely want to make use of having the different races have played by different rules too, based on what abilities that species has. I know the other thing, and this has not been yet, but I personally would like to see not race, but I would like to have. We couldn't do this in GalCiv III because of the way the tech tree was done, but I would like to actually see tech tree, completely different tech trees, basically. And a tech tree is based on an ability, or like with not even an ability, but some root thing that's tied to a civ, based on a general philosophy, and then I can go nuts with it rather than. It was a pain to have to try to go, oh, that's right, this race has text, but not the text. Like, I'd rather have it be like, no, I'm just going to go hog it. I'll have 9 different tech trees, completely different.
Yeah, we do have a question here actually about tech, specifically asking, will the tech tree be cross-integrated like in Galactic Civilizations, instead of the isolated branching paths of GalCiv II and III?
Well, I don't like the mesh stuff that GalCiv III had, where if you have disabilities, other techs show up. I mean, I'm okay with it too, but I'd rather actually see completely different tech tree, because from a balance point of view, I don't have to go, oh, that's right, they don't have. And I'd be willing to implement it, so it's like I would do the work on it. No one has to feel guilty. Because otherwise, I always feel like the dredging is screwed. I'd like to see the dredging be nasty, and I would do that through their tech. Have a special tech.
I think there's one more question I want to ask from the list here, and then we'll see if Goldmine has questions left. And then I think we've come to 2 hours now, which I think is probably enough for the first Q&A. Been quite busy though. So one more question from the list is. Which one do I pick, though? I'm going to pick this one. So the question is, will there be a pit boss or play by email kind of option for multiplayer? So you can have multiple, factions and then actually play by like email or text message, etc.
I highly doubt it. Because the percentage of people who even play this type of game multiplayer is relatively small, and then that would be a subset of that.
Actually, there's one more question out. Kind of ask from here as well. Will it be possible for enemy ships to surrender to you? Because we have multiple.
Be possible for what?
For enemy ships to surrender to you.
I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, that's really because that's you'd be more inclined. What might happen is something more like if it's a character ship, characters surrender.
I know, Brad, that we potentially have some, we're not calling them quests, but like some mission-based events in the game where there are some options that may come up where, you can choose whether to assert toward another, another race, or you discover a race and they, rather than wanting to fight, they may surrender. So some of those things may ultimately, and of course, a lot of this stuff is still being balanced, and I can't say for sure what it will be, but that may be an example, in some of the missions-based stuff where you may come into some of that type of thing. But as far as in combat, no, I don't think we've discussed it at this point.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be? It would be kind of cool that if there's a character in one of the fleets, and rather than dying, they can surrender. That probably wouldn't be that hard to do. That would be neat because then I'd have it be a way of getting a character. Because when I say character, I use a character and leader. A leader is a particular type of character.
Okay. We have a couple of people who want to ask questions. I think these will be the last ones. Civ Hunter. Invited. They have typed the question as well. I think they're asking, has cloud computing been discussed at all? Cloud computing. Yeah.
Well, we already do a little bit of that in GalCiv III, where there's stuff run on Tachyon, which uses Azure. In terms of like headless server for running multiplayer games where you're on a simulation, the answer is no, and I'll tell you why. It is Azure and Amazon very expensive on CPU per core. So if you're doing data distribution, cloud computing works great. If you're actually doing, ironically, computing, where the cores are being used, it gets extremely expensive, really fast.
Right. See if Lord Goldmain is still around. There we go. So what question do you have for us, Lord Goldmain?
They were sort of touched, but in submitted, but not like really put into detail. But like one of you guys, I wasn't paying attention to, was speaking at the time, pointed out that they didn't like humanoid races, but I always found it fun and interesting to have medieval fantasy races pop up in sci-fi games as sci-fi races, versions of themselves, like
space
a civilization
elves.
of dragons and mermaids and elves and dwarves and like that. So,
Well, the draft are dragons, basically.
And can't forget Beastkin.
Yeah. Well, we have the draft. They're dragon based. The Arnor
They look more serpent based to me.
Well, they were originally what really? They're very dragon like. They're meant to be. They're basically space dragons. They evolve.
Yeah, but
dragons.
They don't have wings or horns, so it's kind of like, what are they supposed to be?
Let's see. They I don't think of dragons.
It's the future. You can put a jetpack on them.
Let's see. Draft GalCiv III. Let's see if I can find a screenshot of because the dragons in GalCiv III for sure have horns. Basically, I mean we're pretty close. Let's see. Looking at a screenshot of one. They have horns.
Harry's saying the Mimots are the gremlins.
Here, let's see. Let me put a screenshot in the channel. Would I put that in the questions folder?
You put in no mic or either one's.
I just put it in the questions area.
Yeah.
From a picture of a draft.
Give me a second to figure out how to view that again.
There.
Yeah.
There's also. But I mean, in terms of I mean, obviously, the fans can mod up that. There's nothing stopping them from that. But in terms of like, dwarves or elvish or that, we'd leave that more for the elvish, which is ironically Alteria. But that's neither here or there.
Okay, and well, you didn't really touch base on Beastkin, unfortunately, and I do like my cat girls, but the other thing was the whole color hue thing. I always did find it weird that you could like change the UI colors for your civilization, your ship colors, but not the emblem or colors or the colors used by your leaders / representatives model.
You're right. The logo should be. You should be able to do that. To logo, Chad. Can you make a note about that one? Because that's a good point. Why isn't the logo? Why can't the logo be hue shifted and stuff?
Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah, I mean that's something that we should totally be able to do. That's really weird. The answer is we've never thought about it until just now.
And it shouldn't be that hard when you already have it for ships.
Oh, exactly. By the way, you have to make sure, Chad, that the color wheel is in there because I noticed because GalCiv III has it, but I couldn't do it in when I was customizing my Civ in GalCiv IV. I don't want to lose the color wheel after all that time waiting for it to show up in GalCiv III.
Got it.
Although, if you guys do a color wheel, you might want to invest in a hex type area for hex codes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, FFFF for white. Yeah.
Thank you for questions, Goldmain. I think we are coming to the close of our Q&A here. It's been 2 hours, and very happy everyone turning out and asking questions. And I think we've gotten a lot of answers for the community. We do have a recording. We will make it available later, so everyone who wasn't able to come in and listen to them in live.
I will be posting some screenshots too in the GalCiv IV discussion on the GalCiv Discord, which is just where we are. So in the game talk area.
All right. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Chad, for coming and doing this out of your busy day.
My pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
And then say hi to your dog.
Need to pay the dog tax now. Need to post some pics of the cute puppers. That's the
I can do it. Thanks.
Yeah, and Dev Journal too. It just went live. I see. So this morning. So you guys can check that out too. It talks a little bit about the leaders.
Remember to go on galciv4.com and wishlist the awesome new game that you may have heard about.
Yeah, you'll be able to get the album in the beginning of July or June from galciv4.com.
And hopefully we'll do one of these Q&As soon, probably sometime after the alpha launches. Thank you everyone, and have a good day.